We're continuing our discussion, and today we're going to be talking about choosing founders and key leaders that last. I've talked about the importance of starting an organization with co founders. And in this lesson, again, we're going to be talking about how to choose these co founders in a way that they will not split the organization, they will not quit on you, but they will last. This is a very important topic to discuss, and I think in the entire course, this is one of the areas where you need to absorb everything because it's going to prevent a lot of pain. It's going to save you from a lot of pain. So we are following the flow here to discuss the content of this course, and we touched on calling and confirmation in week 1, and we've begun to look at preparation to some degree. We've looked at preparation to some degree, and let me change my pen again. And we are touching on personnel here. One thing I'm going to do, because there's a lot of work that has to be done at the preparation level, I'm not going to give you all of the work on preparation. I'm going to sort of skip forward and touch personnel and then process and then come back at the end and finish preparation, and you'll put it together because I think many of you are hungry. You want to know how to start an organization. If I spend so much time on preparation, some of you might be too eager. So I want to address why you are in this class. You want to learn how to start a nonprofit sooner than later. And then we'll come back to some of the important things that you need to know to be able to actually start the organization well. So we're going to be touching the level of personnel today, and we're talking on the topic again of choosing co-founders that last. Choosing co-founders and key leaders that last is the topic we're talking about, and let's get right into it. I have before me here some key points that I've written down, and before we start discussing this, let me tell you a story. Really, let me tell you, if several years ago I had a situation in our organization that I initially did not understand why one of our key members was reacting so negatively to the implementation of a key part of our vision. This brother had come to join us in Austin from a different state. He had sacrificed a lot. He brought his young wife. He had been married for less than a few months, and he brought his wife, came to Austin, and basically rented an apartment for the whole year and bought a car and basically moved. And we were paying this brother zero. Okay, he was passionate. He had prayed and felt like God was calling him and his wife to come and dedicate themselves to serving with us for practically the rest of their lives. They didn't have any end, and they came and we had meetings. They signed our leadership covenant, and they wanted to stay with and work with us. And then when we started implementing a key aspect of our ministry vision, all of a sudden they started responding negatively and were wanting to quit. Basically, our organization, the mission is to make disciples and serve the poor. And something that we had discussed with them, and this is not, please don't see this story I'm sharing as and to reflect negatively on them, or I'm going to share another instance where this happened. No negativity here intended. This is an illustration so you can learn from it and be able to avoid some of the things that we made a mistake at early on, so that you don't have to do that in your own ministry. That's the point. So our ministry's goal, vision, mission rather, is to make disciples and serve the poor. Okay. Later on, we will talk about mission and all those things, and you understand mission and vision and all that. But the mission is to make disciples and serve the poor, and we use many strategies for making disciples, and part of our our strategy is to plant churches, is to serve the poor and basically when we're in an area where churches need to be planted, we plant a church. When we're in an area where poverty alleviation is the key need, we serve the poor. And so when we started believing that God was leading us in Austin to start growing and meeting every week and praying and discipling people, baptizing people and leading them to Christ and equipping them, then this brother started responding negatively to that, to that aspect. And I was worried. And then he within a short time basically left. And I wanted to see that this brother invested a lot. Okay, he invested a lot and made a lot of sacrifice to leave from a different state, come to Austin and pay an apartment for an entire year and buy a brand new car and everything, and then to leave. Okay, I think he was with us for like 6 months or so, and then he had to leave. Why? The key is that even though we took time and explained everything to them, they had different underlying assumptions. Different underlying assumptions. Underline that in your notes if you're taking notes. They had different underlying assumptions. And until you get to these different underlying assumptions, you are going to bring people on board that are going to agree with your vision, agree with your mission, agree with everything. These brothers wanted to serve the poor. They wanted to lead people to Christ just like we wanted. But they had different underlying assumptions about how that process was going to go. In their mind, they were in love with the same things we were in love with. And we're still in love with the same things today. You want to avoid bringing people on board that will have different underlying assumptions, because those underlying subconscious assumptions, they may not stop and think about them. The genius of being a competent leader is that you take time and figure out what these underlying assumptions are in you and also in the people that you are going to be bringing on board, because it is extremely painful. You will soon find out, because I know irrespective of how good you are, people are going to quit. Okay, when you have people coming into an organization, they're going to quit, and people close to you that you love very much are going to quit, and the pain is huge. But you will reduce this pain if you take time to figure out people's underlying assumptions. You're not going to solve the whole thing, but you will take time to reduce that. And we're going to talk about 7 underlying assumptions that are key to a God-honoring nonprofit organization. 7 assumptions that you need to make sure that you figure out in yourself and then figure out in the people you're bringing on board. We're going to discuss those today. Now, not only did we not get to the bottom of these underlying assumptions with this brother, we had a second brother who also moved from out of state with his wife and came and bought a house in Austin. And they also came having prayed, and they were 100% sure God had called them to us to come and stay. And they wanted to come and grow with us and serve God with us and be part of our team. And they came. In fact, this brother went through over 15 hours of interviewing time. They came and slept in my house and got so that we could connect. And then we really hit the ball, hit the ball off really well. We started having a great relationship, and they drove down twice to Austin and had long meetings, us showing them everything, explaining things to them, and then they came. They in these 2 cases, one thing though that these brothers loved was our training. In both cases, they took our training, completed our required training. They were so excited. They were thankful to God for the training. But actually working with us wasn't so good because of one key thing that I'm revealing today to you, so that you don't have to do that. You don't have to go through that pain. That was that we had different underlying assumptions. We had the same, they love our mission. These brothers are not quitting the idea of pursuing God, they're not quitting the idea of making disciples or serving the poor. The underlying assumptions are different. And let me tell you this, every organization, your organization, my organization, every organization is different. It's like people, okay? Every human being has spiritual gifts. Well, not every human, every Christian, get that? Every Christian has spiritual gifts. They have passions, they have personalities, they have natural talents, they have experiences. All organizations have this. Your organization is not going to be good for everybody. Remember that. My organization, every organization is good for a few people, not for everybody. There's no organization that will be good for everybody. And that's a big, big, big mistake people make early on in ministry. They think, oh, my organization needs to attract everybody. No, your organization is very unique. It has a unique niche that God is calling it, and it has a unique attributes. It has a unique personality, and only a few people out of the 7 to 8 billion people on earth today will fit as people who should be part of your organization. Your job is to identify those people, not just everybody. And one of the key things, in addition to your mission, your vision, and your core values, and we're going to discuss those in another lesson, in addition to your vision, mission, core values, these assumptions are crucial if you want to form a God-honoring nonprofit organization and you want people. And I have said it and I will say it again that I highly, highly recommend that you don't start a nonprofit without first seeking and finding 2 or 3 other people with the same passion but with different giftings, and then co-starting the thing with them, birthing the whole vision and everything together with them so that it's your baby. It's not your baby that they come to take care of your baby. It's all of your baby that you take care of together. We'll talk about that in a different section and go into detail about that a little bit more. And one of the books that you're going to be reading by Ernesto Ciroli is going to also talk about that in detail. Ciroli's book is awesome. It's a really good read. I encourage you that you read it, especially when you are about to start your organization. So read it for the class, but read it again later. Okay, so let's get into these assumptions. Remember, many non-profit organizations, also for-profit organizations, split because co-founders do not take the time, the lead people do not take the time to look at their assumptions. They start, everything is going on sweet, everything is going on amazing. It's like they're in love and everything is going on well. Then the problem arises and then there's divorce, there's pain. There are no words that I could use to describe to you how painful it is when you lose people within an organization that are people you love. There are no words. But I know that if you start an organization, you will taste it, because regardless of how good you are, people are going to quit. But these lessons that I'm teaching you will, instead of having a quit that is a 10 on 10 quit or a huge quit rate, you may have maybe 3 or 2 or 4 on 10, and that reduces everything and helps you to be able to have some joy while really serving. So let's look at these underlying assumptions that I've been talking about. Okay, the first underlying assumption that we need to look at when we are trying to start a God-honoring nonprofit. Remember, there's a difference between just any nonprofit and a God-honoring nonprofit. Number one is disciple making is crucial. Now, you have to have disciple making at the core of everything that you do in a nonprofit that glorifies God. Now, you have to identify people who also have this at a subconscious level. Now, there are people who have these assumptions and they are knowledgeable about it. Okay, they talk about it. that people who have them, they are on the unconscious level. That's where you really care about. Yeah, when people can verbalize it, it's awesome. But you want to know, for people who don't even talk about it, what their disposition is, what their assumptions are, because when you bring those people thinking that, oh, they love disciple making, their real colors. And these people are not bad people. You are like that. I am like that. All of us are like that. We will then begin to, when when things really come to a point where action needs to happen, those colors will start manifesting, and people start saying, I really don't like this. And you just say, why? What happened? We've been doing all this well, and then they just start saying, I just don't feel right. Feel right? When we've sacrificed all this? Yeah, they don't feel right because the underlying unconscious assumptions that were there before they came have now surfaced. Something that is important to note, and I've taught this in a different lesson, not in this course, is that over 90% of the decisions that we make are made by our unconscious mind. That means that with the people that you're going to be trying to bring on board, only 10% of the decisions, 10% of the things they do are things that they could even verbalize it, but they're not going to verbalize all 10%. Because who is able to talk about everything they know when they're meeting with people? There are going to be things. So in the end, you're probably going to get only about 2% or some very small percentage. But your job is to seek to be quite discerning. And this is something you could learn, okay? This is not something you just fold your hands and so go, oh no, I have nothing to do with this. So making sure that you ascertain the assumptions as it comes to disciple making is crucial, because you see many ministries and churches and parachurch ministries, because your ministry, if you're a Christian, is going to be a parachurch ministry because it's an extension of the church. Okay? You see people start going, oh, there's too much focus on disciple making. Like everything is about evangelism and disciple making, because their true colors are coming out. They're Christians who assent to the concept of disciple making. But there are others who just know that disciple making is supposed to be number one. At the unconscious level, they know that, and they're willing to pursue that. Those are the people you want, who know it both at the conscious and unconscious level, who know it both in the tip of the iceberg, that is 10%, and the real iceberg, that is 90%. The unconscious mind is about 90%. It's like if you look at an iceberg, the tip is the conscious mind, the hidden huge mass underneath the water is the unconscious mind. You want to reach that mass and know what people believe, what are the underlying assumptions. And a good way to know what people's underlying assumptions are is to see what they're already doing in the past. If you see somebody who's already very involved in making disciples in a specific way, well then that's settled, you know. Having those kinds of people is not always possible, so you have to look beyond what they say and work in ways that there's no work to prove. For example, if you came and wanted to take me to be a co-worker with you and start a nonprofit, well, you could easily know what my underlying assumptions are, because I've been running a nonprofit organization for 10 years. I've been caring for orphans for 10 years. You could see what I've been doing. And that will tell you, as people often say, actions speak louder than words. That will tell you that. But many of the people you're going to work with haven't done anything, just like you may not have done anything. And so you have to look beyond that. So disciple making is crucial. Otherwise, you will start seeing people go, oh, he's too focused on winning souls. He's too focused on discipling people. We should be doing this. We should be doing that. And that's how teams split. Okay, that's how teams split. Another one that you need to ascertain is numerical growth. Some Christians that start going, because numerical growth is important in a God-honoring non-profit setting. You have to grow. That's how it should be. You have to grow. Okay, and some people start going, for example, Oh, he's too interested in growing, and he just cares about having a big organization or having things big, big, big. We should just be focused on quality. They start saying he's worried about quantity. We should be focused on quality. But the people who are interested in numerical growth are usually people who are interested in quality too. In fact, the truth is this: you cannot have good numerical growth without focusing on quality. It's just that some people, just because of their underlying assumptions, just may want to keep something really small, tiny, while another person really wants to see it a little bigger and be able to function more completely and meet all its needs. But you need to take time early on to be able to ascertain this and make sure that you are bringing on board team members that actually have the same underlying assumptions as you have, so that those underlying assumptions, that's what builds trust. Okay, that's what builds trust, and it builds loyalty. Okay, loyalty is so crucial. Loyalty is something you want. Okay, it's something you want when you're starting a nonprofit or any endeavor. Really, you want loyalty. Okay, you want a group of people that are loyal, and you want trust, and these underlying assumptions build trust. Okay, they build trust. Now, so look at numerical growth. We've talked about ascertaining underlying assumptions when it comes to disciple making, and you are going to ascertain your underlying assumptions, and then you are going to ascertain everybody who's a core member, whom you are considering to be a core person's underlying assumptions. So it's not just about them, it's about you. Before you approach others, take time and meditate and discern and see, figure out your own underlying assumptions, and then you now also seek to know the underlying assumptions of the other brothers and sisters you're going to be bringing on board. These assumptions are very important. Again, they're very important, and they are key to the success of your God-honoring nonprofit organization. Okay, so we've talked about numerical growth. The next type of growth that a God-honoring organization should pursue is the growth that occurs by multiplying leaders and planting new organizations. This God has wired into many different things that he has created. You see, animals of different types, they make babies, and their babies go. They leave home and go and become parents, and those parents make babies. You see that in grass that makes seed, and plants that make seeds, and those seeds become also other plants. You see that in the microscopic world of microbes or microbial organisms, and then you see that in the macro level. You see that everywhere. Remember that healthy organizations reproduce. Okay, many people often want to think that, okay, you want to build, and I'm talking about God-honoring, disciple-making organizations. Okay, just get that. There are two kinds of growth. There's a growth, I already illustrated this before. There's a growth where you have to grow and become big. To a certain level, you grow in size. That's important, because as a person, you have to grow to become a certain size to be able to be effective and carry your own weight and be able to be functional. But when you keep growing fat, at a certain point, it is not helpful. What the kind of growth that should take over at that time is multiplying. So you start producing other people after your own kind and filling the earth not by just your humongous, immovable elephant size, but by the multiplication of new people. And so this kind of growth is growth where you attract young, passionate leaders. You disciple them. You show them how to do what you're doing. If you're a carpenter, you teach them how to be a carpenter and you bless them. You empower them. You show them how God loves honest carpenters who make the best chairs. And when they make the best chairs and they sell them and make a profit and they can take care of their family, that honors God, and that they should train other carpenters. If it is disciple making in the area of orphan care, vocational disciple making, that you also do that. Equip other people, send them to go. Don't try to be covering the whole world with a huge organization that has tentacles everywhere that can't move as easily. This is the kind of growth. But you have to make sure that people that you are bringing on board have these underlying assumptions already, that they have that. Otherwise, when you start trying to implement this kind of growth, they start saying, that's not how we should be growing, and who they are on the inside, that unconscious 90% starts coming out, and they become different people. You start going, "Ah." And then that's where splitting happens, and pain. It's like a divorce. It's a pain. You want to avoid that. Okay, you want to avoid that at all costs. The next thing is that you need to ascertain the assumptions as it concerns functions and forms. Okay, functions are more important than forms, and that is key, and you want to ascertain that. What functions are what you actually do. Forms are the shapes, the organizational structures that you take to be able to do that form. For example, if you're going into orphan care, which is what many of these people taking this class are going into, it is very, very, very crucial. Like, I can't use words that will ever express the degree of importance. It's very important to know that the function, which is to care for children, which is to stand for the best interest of the children, which is to shoot for the highest standards of care. That's the function of the organization. That function is superior and it is sovereign over every form that you take now. When you start with that function, you then say, well, what form should I take? Should I have a form that puts children in families? Should I have a form that has a residential component, that is a transitional orphanage where some needy children can stay there until they find a home, and ones that are very needy and don't find a home, like some children with disabilities find it very difficult to find a home, and they may end up staying in a home with you for the rest of their lives or at least until they grow up and leave. Should I have a component of that? Should I have a sponsorship program like World Vision does, where they really focus on community development a lot? What form should I take? The form is something that you take, and forms can change. You can go into a community where there's war, HIV has devastated, and a lot of adults have died, and there's just no families to be able to put children in there. So an orphanage may actually be needed to be able to function for some years until the community regains its strength before children can be put with families. So forms can change. Forms change. Forms do what they change. But functions really don't. The function, the best interest of the child. And these form and function may even change from child to child. The function in every child's life is the same, but the form that you use for one child, it may be different from the form that you use for another child. Are you getting that? That's important. When you have a certain, otherwise you might bring people on board that just have an underlying assumption deep there in that huge iceberg underneath the tip. That huge 90%, they just want to have an orphanage. It doesn't matter. They just love to be able to go hug 20 to 100 children. It doesn't matter whether there's scientific evidence for that institutional setting or not. Or you may have others who just hate the an institutional setting. They just hate it, and they only want to do adoptions. They want to put children in homes and adopt them. You have different people. You want to understand these assumptions first and look for people that are flexible, that have the same assumptions as you, because good organizations is a group of people that share the same values, the same underlying assumptions, that work together for a common goal. Okay? This is crucial, important. The next one, so that's the fourth one to look at. The next one is that you need to look for people who also share the underlying assumption that excellence is a non-negotiable priority when it comes to glorifying God. I've said this before. Our God is an excellent God. He is the God of the universe, and He dwells in amazing, amazing light. He is a God of all glory. He's a God of excellence. Like, you cannot offer God anything less than excellence and be considered a worshiper. Remember, your work is your worship. I've said before that the Hebrew word for worship, avodah, is also the word for service. What you're going to be doing serving the Lord is that you're going to be worshiping Him. Your work has to be immaculate. Yeah, it has to be. The whole idea that I'm going to offer God whatever I have, that God is going to accept that because He's your dad, is missing the fact that your dad is the God of perfection. That your dad is also the king, the most excellent king in the whole world. He loves you with all his life. He loves you to death. He loves you until he dies for you. But he's willing to give you the best to offer to his glory, but he's not willing to accept a mediocre offer that you have. He's not willing to accept that. That's a very important point to note. He's not willing to accept anything that is mediocre. And remember that when it comes to excellence, that mediocrity really affects the way people do ministry. It affects the team members. It affects the people that you're trying to reach. It affects everything. It negatively affects everything. It negatively affects all the stakeholders in the ministry. It affects the staff. It affects those who serve, the supporters. It doesn't inspire. Mediocrity begets mediocrity. Okay, if you want to glorify God, you want to shoot for excellence, not mediocrity. Okay. And the solution for mediocrity is what? Is pursuing excellence, having that as one of the underlying assumptions for everybody you bring on board, so that excellence becomes easily developed into a culture. Remember this, people are very slow to change. Oh boy. God changes people. Don't get it wrong. God changes people, but only God can change people. And your job in building an organization is not to focus on changing the key leaders. Please write this down somewhere. Your job in creating an organization is not to change the key leaders, is to bring in key leaders that are already changed so that together you can work to change others outside, okay? If you seek to try to change key leaders, you're going to be very sorry. I speak from experience and from research, from personal experience and from a lot of research and wisdom in this area. You don't want mediocrity, you want excellence, and that happens as you pursue people and look at the underlying assumptions that these people have that really would affect how they're going to manifest when shove comes to pull and work. Okay, now there are three areas of excellence that I think are important to look at when we talk about excellence here. There is excellence in spiritual things. And this division between spiritual things and non-spiritual things is really superficial, but I use that so that we can see there's excellence in spiritual things, and there is excellence also in the daily things that people might consider non-spiritual. Okay, there's excellence in that area, and the Bible emphasizes excellence in every area. Okay, and remember that excellence doesn't mean perfection. Excellence is different from perfection. Only God is excellent. Only God is perfect, but excellence in the life of an organization is not perfection. If you shoot for perfection, you will not get anywhere. You'll not even take off. Shoot for excellence, okay? And that means that you're going to be constantly evaluating yourself and your ministry and the people who are leading and sort of pushing towards that excellence, okay? Now, the next thing that is important, the sixth thing to look at is that strong faith is crucial. The New Testament life is a life of faith. The Bible says we walk by faith and not by what? You finished that. And not by, you got it right, and not by sight. We work by faith and not by sight. To please God, to run a God-honoring nonprofit, you're going to walk by faith a lot. And I don't mean walk blindly. That faith is founded on truth. But some people, like every Christian would agree with you that faith is important. But look below the tip of the iceberg to that huge mass. Do they really unconsciously, as an underlying assumption, is pursuing faith something that they see as crucial? Because faith is going to be crucial if you're going to succeed. And some people start saying, some leaders whom if you bring on board and they didn't have these underlying assumption that you may have, they'll start saying, he's not practical. We need to be practical around here. He's being unreal. He's living an idealistic life. He's viewing everything as rose-colored when you should view things rightly. And those kinds of things are coming out for things that you have to believe God and have faith that stands on the truth. When that starts happening, splitting is right around the corner. You want to avoid that. And the last thing that we need to look at here is that you want people who, and let me give you, I just thought about it. Let me give you some. Remember in the Bible you see people like Noah. You remember Noah? And people like Abraham and people like that. Read them and learn about faith from them. How they really exercise faith. But when you look at the faith of Abraham, be careful not to think that the faith of Abraham is saying that you need to jump into doing things without preparation, okay? Because that's a very commonly misunderstood area. Abraham's situation was very different. God basically told him, hey, Abraham, move to Africa. Say Abraham was an American. Abraham moved to Africa, settled there, start living there. Many years in advance, 450 years to be more exact, I'm going to make your children really save Africa and take it over. Abraham, you don't need, it's a 450 years plan. Like, what preparation do you need? Abraham got in his whole life when Abraham was there, Abraham the American in Africa, didn't even, he wasn't focused on leading anybody to Christ or on preaching Jesus or on converting anyone. He just basically lived there. And God blessed him. He became prosperous. He bought land. The place where he buried himself and his wife, he bought it. And he died without anything happening. It was the children that he had, his generations down the road. So that kind of call, you don't need no preparation to do that. You just need to go, and God will show you where. Showing you where doesn't mean you are prepared for it, okay? There's a difference between showing you where you need to go and preparing you for what you're going to do when you're there. But for Abraham, the preparation was his life. He was going to live there and then just have children, and Abraham did this. And he warned that Isaac should not be taken out of there even if he didn't have a wife, because he knew that he had to be there. Okay, so let's move on. Acting courageously is also vital. God, if you want to really read something that will help you on that, read Joshua 1. And you see how God keeps telling Joshua to be courageous, because you, my friend, who has a vision from God to go start a nonprofit, you are a Joshua. You are a Joshua, and you're going to be entering a territory and conquering it, and you're going to be defeating God's enemies and taking over territory that was lost. And you need to be courageous, and you want people by your side who are courageous. You need to be able to remove people who are not courageous from your team. And everybody is going to say they're courageous. You need to look at the underlying assumptions. Do they have that as an underlying assumption? Okay? Do they have that? Is that one of their underlying assumptions? Is that one of them? Now again, I write down here that you need to do all these things. Also, you need to use your your core values to basically screen people, and you need to use your mission to screen people. If it sounds like a lot, it's more than I'm giving you. But let me tell you, the joy of doing it right is so great that the work pales in comparison to the joy of really doing this, okay? The joy pales. Do not ever, please, if you're taking this class, do not make the mistake of just going over these things very cursorily and then trying to go and start an organization when you've not been prepared. I think you ought to take time. Austin Bible Institute offers a lot of classes that will prepare you for that and really grow and go out and do something that lasts.